Hey guys, tonight we're gliding gently back to a land of endless sun, lotus-scented air, and mirrors made not of glass, but burnished bronze. You're standing beside the Nile, just as twilight slips over the palms, watching the last light ripple over water as a young Egyptian woman tilts a mirror made of polished copper toward her face. No glass, no selfies, no ring lights, just the shimmer of reflected firelight and the practiced motion of a brush dipped in something faintly sparkly and blue. You're about to see how beauty wasn't just vanity, it was sacred protective and political, and also surprisingly sticky. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start with the most basic, indispensable object of beauty, the mirror. But in ancient Egypt, mirrors were more than a reflective surface. They were tools of magic, symbols of the sun, God Ra, and sometimes literal status symbols. These early mirrors were flat discs of highly polished copper or bronze, often rounded and mounted on ornate handles. Obsidian was a luxury option, imported from far away, darker but even smoother. And they didn't just reflect your face, they were believed to reflect your essence. That's a lot of pressure before breakfast. Women and men would hold these shining circles up to the light, turning their faces to catch the glow. The mirror wasn't passive, it illuminated. Imagine trying to line your eyeliner using one of these, hoping the sun didn't move mid-swipe. You learn to angle your cheekbones with precision, and these weren't hiding in drawers either. Mirrors were proudly displayed on dressing tables set among alabaster jars of unguents and perfumes, and often shaped like an ankh, the symbol of life. They were part of a beauty altar as much as a beauty routine. Here's a quirky fact. Archaeologists found mirrors tucked inside the linen wrappings of mummies, suggesting the journey to the afterlife was one you should look fabulous for. After all, you never know who you might run into in the field of reeds. Historians still argue whether these mirrors were used solely for cosmetic preparation, or if they held ritual significance beyond the personal. Some believe priestesses used them in ceremonies to capture divine light. Others argue that's just projecting modern mysticism backward. But here's something that doesn't get enough attention: the mirror's role as a democratizer. Sure, the fancy bronze ones were for elites, but even less wealthy households had access to some form of reflection. Polished pottery shards, water in dark bowls, bits of shiny shell, anything to glimpse yourself. In a society obsessed with symmetry and harmony, knowing how you looked was key. And let's talk technique. Without adjustable lighting or magnification, you had to become your own lighting designer. Most beauty rituals happened early in the morning or near oil lamps in dark rooms. It gave everything a golden hue. Maybe that's why they favored gold eyeliner. Meanwhile, your fingers are already starting to smell like myrrh. You've just dipped into a nearby jar, the salve gritty with crushed frankincense meant to prep your skin before the real work begins. Your sister adjusts your wig, checking your reflection over your shoulder. Smile, she teases. The gods are always watching. A servant nearby fans away mosquitoes with a woven reed fan and a cat because, of course, there's a cat circles your legs, rubbing its scented fur against your freshly oiled calf. The room is dim, warm, fragrant. You're not rushing. Beauty is never rushed, especially when your mirror glows like the eye of Ra, and you're painting yourself, not just to attract glances, but to reflect the cosmos itself. Now that your mirror is angled just right, it's time to dip your fingers into that small palette of crushed minerals and magic, what we might call makeup, but the Egyptians called protection. You press your kohl stick into the rim of your eye, pulling the line out and up, elongating your gaze until you look like a falcon ready to strike. Sure, it's beautiful, but it's also practical, medicinal, and downright mystical. Ancient Egyptians wore makeup not just to look good, but to stay safe. That striking black eyeliner. It was made from galena, a lead-based mineral that may sound dangerous now, but was thought to prevent eye infections and ward off the glare of the desert sun. And in an odd twist of fate, modern studies suggest they may have been onto something. Trace exposure to lead sulfide might have stimulated nitric oxide production in the skin, basically giving you an immune system boost along with your smoky eye. Eat your heart out, Sephora. The bright green eyeshadow that came from malachite ground down into a fine powder and mixed with animal fat or oil. This gave it staying power and possibly a distinct scent. Imagine slathering on something that smells faintly of goat but glows like jungle leaves. Beauty is always about balance. Historians still argue whether men wore makeup daily or only on ceremonial occasions. Tomb paintings show both genders adorned in full liner and pigment, but written records are murkier. Some believe it was common for men of higher classes. Others think it was reserved for specific events or religious roles. But here's something you don't hear often. Children wore makeup too. Not all the time, but enough to be noticed in tomb art. Whether it was symbolic, protective, or just plain grown-up, no one agrees. As you continue the ritual, you can't help but notice how methodical it is. Your palette has recesses for different colors, maybe carved from ivory or shaped like a fish. One of the most popular designs. You crush the pigments gently, mindful not to spill, because some of these ingredients had to be imported from far-off mines or valleys. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, for instance, was rare and costly, a deep blue that shimmered like the Nile under starlight. And speaking of shimmer, one overlooked detail. The ancient Egyptians added crushed shells to their cosmetics to catch the light. Imagine walking through a courtyard and glinting every time you turn your head. It wasn't just about beauty. It was about spectacle. But there's more than the face. You dip a reed stick into a tiny jar and stain your lips with red ochre mixed into beeswax. The color clings like lacquer even in the heat. This isn't about allure. Well, not entirely. Red lips were a symbol of vitality and divine favor. Pale lips were thought to indicate illness. So yes, lipstick may have been an early diagnostic tool. By the time you're finished, you look less like someone heading to the market and more like someone preparing to greet a god. And honestly, that's kind of the point. In a culture where gods walked among men, or at least visited temples on a regular schedule, looking your best wasn't vanity. It was spiritual hygiene. Makeup was a form of prayer, protection, and praise. A mirror became a portal. a palette, a ritual object. Your fingers glisten slightly with oil. You dab them on your linen dress and laugh. It's already stained with yesterday's henna and honey. You glance at your reflection again. The copper disc captures just enough light to show the crisp flick of your liner and the soft gleam of green shadow. And for a moment, you understand this isn't just self-care. It's history survival and style rolled into one flick of a reed brush. The air thickens with sweetness as you unstopper a small alabaster jar. Out wafts a heady aroma lotus frankincense, maybe a whisper of cinnamon bark. You pause, inhaling deeply. If there's one thing the ancient Egyptians did exceptionally well, it was scent. Perfume wasn't just a luxury, it was a signature, a shield, even a religious act. You don't just want to smell good, you want to smell divine, literally. Cleopatra's rumored perfumes, the stuff of scrolls and legends, supposedly left her scent lingering long after she'd gone. Ships were said to smell of her before they docked. Dramatic, sure. But if you were going to be considered a living goddess, why not smell like one too? Perfumes were usually oil-based, giving them staying power in the desert heat. Concoctions included ingredients like myrrh, cardamom, calamus, and brace yourself goose fat. Mixed into unguents, these were applied behind the ears, along the hairline, and sometimes even on the soles of the feet. Yes, foot, perfume. Because apparently, even your sandals should swoon when you walk by. Historians still argue whether certain perfumes were used to seduce, to sanctify, or to signify class status. Some suggest the more elaborate blends were restricted to the elite or reserved for funerary use. Others point to recipes found in more modest graves and say, nah, everyone got a little spritz now and then. And speaking of recipes, we actually have some. The city of Mendes was famous for its kai-fi, a complex mixture that could include up to 16 ingredients. It was burned as incense, used as perfume, and even ingested as a medicine. Multitasking in the ancient world still a thing. You dab a little lotus oil on your wrists, then press them together. The scent blooms, slowly unfurling, like the flower itself. It's soft aquatic, with a slightly bitter finish, kind of like the Nile at dawn. Another popular scent was blue lotus, often infused into wine. Imagine that date night eyeliner, sharp linen, crisp, and your drink doubles as aromatherapy. You'd be relaxed and radiant. But perfume wasn't just for the body. Rooms were scented too. Cone-shaped perfume waxes were worn atop wigs, and hats melting slowly over the course of the day to release fragrance. So yes, people literally wore melting scent pucks on their heads. No notes. There's even evidence that certain temples were scented using burning perfumes during rituals. The gods, after all, were thought to be drawn to beautiful smells. You couldn't summon divine favor with BO. Your cat sniffs your wrist approvingly, or maybe disapprovingly. It's hard to tell with cats. Either way, you're now fully perfumed with your wig slightly askew from adjusting the wax cone, which is starting to soften under the morning sun. And if you're wondering whether perfume was gendered, nope. Men wore it too often, just as lavishly. Some even anointed their weapons with it before battle. You want to go into combat smelling like a floral thunderstorm. Ancient Egypt approves. The last thing you do is run your fingers through your wig, smoothing it down, and catch a whiff of cinnamon oil worked into the strands. Your scalp tingles a little, not unpleasantly. Maybe it's the goose fat. You lean over your polished mirror one last time. You're glowing, not from bronzer or highlighter, but from ritual tradition and a nose full of lotus. The perfume cone is melted just enough to give your hair that glossy sheen when you shift your wig. And yes, you're wearing a wig, not out of fashion, but out of necessity. In ancient Egypt, wigs weren't a party accessory. They were your armor against the heat, the lice, and the societal expectation that your scalp should smell like imported cinnamon bark. Your natural hair, if you had any, was probably cropped short or shaved altogether. Cleanliness was next to divinity, and in a place where the temperature regularly mocked human endurance, removing hair helped with hygiene and comfort. But bald didn't mean bare. That's where the wigs came in, and these weren't throwaway pieces. Made from human hair, sometimes blended with plant fibers or sheep's wool, they ranged from the practical to the spectacular. Some were short and simple, others layered and ornate, curled and lacquered to perfection. Think ancient Egyptian runway, with your head doing most of the work. Each wig was custom fitted and scented. Oils infused with cedar myrrh or mint were massaged into the base before you wore it, meaning your head was basically a slow-burning sachet. You wouldn't just look elegant, you'd leave a trail of fragrance in your wake. Wig maintenance was a thing too. People stored them on wooden stands, cleaned them with special solutions, and even had servants whose job was to prepare and style them. You don't just toss your sacred cinnamon wig under the bed, you honor it. Historians still argue whether the biggest, most elaborate wigs were worn daily or only during festivals. Some believe the tall, curled wigs seen in tomb paintings were ceremonial only. Others point out the presence of multiple wigs in a single burial and say, hey, why would you take 3 if you weren't changing them out? And let's not forget the wax. Yes, wax. Egyptians used depilatory pastes made from honey resin and crushed ants. Yes, ants to remove unwanted hair. Smooth skin wasn't just aesthetic. It was moral. A clean body was a holy body. You're sitting now, one leg propped on a linen-covered stool, as your sister applies a thick mixture of sugar and resin to your calf. She blows on it, once yanks it off with a linen strip, and you yelp. Beauty hurts, even 5,000 years ago. And it wasn't just the legs. Underarms, arms, sometimes the entire body. Some high-status women reportedly depilated their brows completely and painted new ones in with soot and oil. You're sculpting yourself into a vision, not just for mortals, but for the gods. Let's talk under the wig. The scalp was often treated with salves to prevent irritation, with mixtures that included castor oil, donkey milk, and crushed herbs. Some recipes call for the marrow of a crocodile femur, which raises a few questions. Meanwhile, the wigs themselves had status markers. Gold thread beads, faience ornaments, and lapis pins weren't just pretty, they said, I'm closer to the divine than you. And they probably jingled slightly when you turned your head, which feels satisfyingly dramatic. In fact, priests and royalty were often depicted with wigs during key rituals. The more curls, the more clout, and those cones of scented wax melted right into the hair, giving an olfactory countdown to the end of a ceremony. You glance back at the mirror. Between the painted lids, the perfumed skin, and the towering wig, woven through with tiny golden charms, you feel regal. Not in the haughty, towering sense, but in that sleepy sort of way, when the light hits your cheek just right, and you think, yeah, I'd worship me too. It's high noon now, and the Egyptian sun is less of a friendly spotlight and more of an unrelenting cosmic hairdryer. You retreat into the shade, clutching a small alabaster jar filled with a thick golden cream. Skincare under this sky is not optional. It's a survival strategy with a dash of glamour. You scoop out a dollop of the mixture, mostly honey, a little milk, and possibly a crushed fig or two, and rub it gently across your arms. The honey is sticky, yes, but also antibacterial. The milk lactic acid modern dermatologists would say, except the Egyptians just knew, it left your skin soft. This is ancient exfoliation sweetened and sacred. And if you're thinking that's as strange as it gets, oh child, let us now discuss crocodile dung. Yes, for real. Crocodile dung was dried ground and blended with sour milk to form an anti-aging mask. Historians still argue whether this concoction had any real benefits or if it was symbolic. Maybe the strength of the crocodile, maybe a fertility charm, or maybe just maybe someone long ago smeared it on their face, noticed it worked, and didn't ask too many questions. Quirkier still is the use of natron, the same substance used to embalm the dead in skin cleansing routines. A naturally occurring salt blend, natron helped reduce odor and tighten skin. You might say your skincare routine could double as a mummification trial run. Historians also debate how often these products were used. Daily only, during festivals, were the crocodile masks just for the elite, or was dung-based glow accessible to all classes? The records are silent. The dung, unfortunately, is not. But the most treasured skincare ingredient of all might have been oils. Castor oil, moringa oil, and sesame oil were slathered over every inch of exposed skin. They protected against dehydration, minimized burns, and even repelled insects. That's right, ancient sunscreen was greasy, fragrant, and often smelled faintly of nuts. You recline beneath a woven palm roof, letting your latest concoction soak in. The breeze brings the scent of baked earth and lotus mingled with the herbal steam rising from your oiled limbs. Your skin glows not in the Instagram filter way, but in a sun-kissed, myrrh-blessed, possibly anointed by priests kind of way. Children, too, were protected with salves. Mothers rubbed herbal pastes into their baby's skin, whispering prayers of protection. And priests anointed themselves before rituals, not just as a spiritual act, but as literal armor against the elements. You reach into another jar and pull out a thick cream made with beeswax, scented with frankincense. You smooth it under your arms, behind your knees, and at the nape of your neck. It's the Egyptian version of a highlighter, marking the places where light and possibly gods are most likely to kiss you. And here's the thing, this isn't indulgent. This is maintenance. This is faith. Your body is a temple, but one that constantly fights sand, sun, wind, and mosquitoes the size of lentils. Even the clothing helps. Your linen dress is finely woven, nearly transparent, allowing your skin to breathe and your carefully oiled shoulders to shimmer just a bit. Fashion as climate response. Ancient, chic, effective. Back at your mirror, you examine your face. There's a faint pinkness across the nose from yesterday's sun. You make a note to double up on oil next time and maybe smear a bit of pomegranate pulp. It's said to calm the skin, or was it symbolic of rebirth? Either way, it smells divine. You lie back on a mat, one hand resting lazily on your stomach, the other twirling a piece of fragrant reed. You're not getting ready for anything in particular today. Sometimes the ritual is the reason. You're not just caring for your body, you're inviting the gods to notice how well you've tended their creation. Your hands are still slick with oil as you reach for a small pottery jar filled with crushed red ochre. Time for the nails. Not just a final flourish, but a little sacred signal that you belong to a world where beauty and magic are more entwined than even your braided wig. You begin with your thumbs dabbing the ochre in careful strokes, staining each nail a rusty red. The color isn't chosen at random. It symbolizes life vitality, the divine energy coursing through the Nile and through you. Everyone from farmers to pharaohs paid attention to nails. Polished, painted, protected, like little shields on the ends of your fingers. And if you want to go a step further, henna, derived from the leaves of the Lawsonia plant ground and mixed with water into a paste henna, was more than a beauty treatment. It was a rite, a blessing, a silent conversation with the gods. You smear it along your palms, up the fingers, and even on your soles. The patterns you draw might be simple or intricate spirals, or lines, each one echoing symbols passed down for generations. Historians still argue whether certain henna patterns had fixed meanings or if they were purely decorative. Some say specific designs warded off evil. Others suggest it was mostly fashion. As usual, in Egypt, the answer is likely yes, both. You let the henna dry stiff and cool against your skin while you admire your work. The scent is earthy, a little sour, a little sweet. It lingers longer than you'd expect. And it wasn't just about decoration. Henna was often applied before important moments, births, weddings, festivals, or religious rites. Some women left offerings of their old henna bowls in temples, as if to say, "Thank you for the beauty. Here's the brush." But the ritual doesn't stop with hands and feet. Jewelry plays its part too. You reach for bronze bracelets, slipping them over your wrists with a satisfying clink. Then the wide beaded collar, shimmering with carnelian and turquoise. Beauty in Egypt wasn't just about the body, it was about layering protection, status, and story into every visible surface. Men didn't shy away from this either. Priests and nobles alike sported painted nails, hennaed beards, and kohl-lined eyes. If your appearance was divine, then why not lean into it? You weren't just showing off. You were honoring Ma'at, the cosmic balance, by keeping your external world in harmony. You squint at a smudge on one of your pinky nails and reapply a dab of pigment. Perfection is an ideal. Correction is the reality. One fringe belief even held that chipped nail pigment could invite misfortune. Better to fix it than tempt the chaos. A small child scurries past you, his hands covered in henna, too, the thick orange paste smeared clumsily. He grins, showing a missing tooth. Beauty was a family affair, learned, shared, celebrated. Everyone had a role, even if that role was spilling the pigment and accidentally sitting on the cat. You shake your hands gently to finish drying the red of your nails, catching the light. It's not a flashy glow, but a warm, sun-baked one. It says, "I am cared for. I am part of something older than kings. I am ready." And when the henna finally flakes away, leaving those burnt orange stains behind, you'll begin again. The ritual is never finished. It just rests between applications. You're reclining on a low stool now as one of your cousins carefully passes you a small ceramic pot. It's your toothpaste. And let's be clear, it's not minty, it's not sparkly, and it's definitely not fluoride approved. You lift the lid and get a strong whiff of chalk, maybe burnt eggshell, frankincense. There's a grainy texture and a hint of spice, like someone tried to blend a potpourri recipe with gravel. That's because ancient Egyptian dental care was, let's say, ambitious and abrasive. Toothpaste in ancient Egypt often included powdered ox hooves, crushed pumice salt, ashes, and even powdered burnt bread. One recipe calls for mixing these with vinegar or honey. You dab some onto a frayed twig, the ancient toothbrush, and start scrubbing. It's gritty, but effective. Egyptians were one of the first cultures to prioritize oral hygiene. With all the bread and sand in their diets, their teeth wore down quickly. By midlife, many people had serious dental erosion. But that didn't mean they gave up. They doubled down. And it wasn't just about keeping teeth clean. Breath mattered. Bad breath was thought to repel not just people, but possibly spirits. So, breath-freshening chews, little pellets made from frankincense, cinnamon, and herbs were popular. You pop one in and immediately regret it. It's like eating potpourri soaked in pine sap. Effective possibly, enjoyable absolutely not. Historians still argue whether these breath pellets were reserved for the elite or used by all classes. The ingredients suggest access issues, but the frequency with which they appear in tomb goods implies broader appeal. After all, if you're heading into the afterlife, fresh breath is a solid first impression. Let's not forget dental surgery. Yes, ancient Egyptian medical texts mention procedures for tooth pain and infections. Some mummies show signs of dental work, including splinting loose teeth with gold wire. You'd be lying there, eyes coal-lined, mouth open, while a priest-physician probed your gums with a copper hook. There's no anesthesia, unless you count screaming into a papyrus pillow. Oddly, there's no strong evidence of tooth extraction. Even for terrible cavities, it seems they'd rather plug or bind than pull. Some think this was due to spiritual beliefs. Removing part of the body might compromise your completeness in the afterlife. Others say it was just because they didn't have forceps. Again, historians disagree. You rinse your mouth with a bitter herbal wash, possibly infused with myrrh or mint leaves, and spit discreetly into a clay basin. You do feel fresher. A bit sandpapered, but fresher. It's worth noting that the status symbol wasn't just white teeth, but intact teeth. Yellowing wasn't a concern. Missing molars. That was the horror story. And without modern sugar, their dental issues came more from abrasion than decay. Your mirror gleams nearby, reflecting your slightly polished grin. There's red from henna on your hands, a shimmer of oil on your skin, and now the faintest hint of cinnamon clinging to your breath. You're the whole package if the package were made of limestone linen and enough spices to season a small goat. And just as you're finishing up, a servant brings a new chew stick, freshly frayed at one end. You tuck it into your sash. Because in ancient Egypt, being prepared wasn't just good practice, it was sacred. The morning breeze softens as you step through a limestone doorway into a room so quiet, the silence seems woven into the very walls. You're not here to freshen up. or mix a new paste. This room belongs to the dead, and yet it smells faintly of lavender and lotus. Welcome to a tomb. But not just any tomb. This one's a private beauty stash, sealed for eternity, complete with all the creams, mirrors, pigments, and combs that a person might need in the afterlife. Because looking your best didn't stop when your heart was weighed. You needed to show up at the gates of the underworld, moisturized, manicured, and ready for judgment. The walls are painted with scenes of the deceased sitting before a vanity or being tended to by servants. Beneath the murals, actual artifacts sit arranged just so. A coal pot shaped like a duck, a mirror with a handle carved into a lotus stem, a delicate jar that once held perfumed oil still clinging faintly to the alabaster. You kneel beside one of the stone boxes and lift the lid. Inside, a tiny ivory comb, its teeth worn smooth by time. It's intimate, tender, not a king's scepter or a general's weapon, just a tool for taming hair before meeting Osiris. Historians still debate whether the objects in these tombs were ceremonial or used in life. Some show signs of wear scratches, fingerprints, dried residue, suggesting daily use. Others are pristine, created specifically for burial. Maybe both are true. Maybe death was the ultimate makeover, and your tomb was your dressing room, and the products weren't generic. Personalized palettes with inscriptions, monogrammed pots, even instructions for use. For the Lady Tia's morning application, not quite Sephora, but close enough. The idea wasn't just to look good. Beauty was proof of order of Ma'at. A well-groomed appearance in the afterlife was a sign that you had lived in harmony with the world's laws. Wrinkled, smudged, uncombed. That might raise celestial eyebrows. Even the gods appreciated the effort. Offerings of beauty items were common at temples. Priests would anoint statues of deities, with unguents paint their faces, even change their clothing. If the gods themselves got touch-ups, you'd better believe Grandma Nefer was taking her red ochre to the next world. Here's a curious tidbit. Some tombs included makeup kits for the deceased's ka, their spirit double, which means 2 sets of everything, one for you and one for your metaphysical twin. Matching eyeliner essential. You glance around the tomb and spot a tray of rings and necklaces. Some still glitter, faintly beads of turquoise and lapis lazuli, holding their color after millennia. You can almost imagine the deceased slipping them on, looking into their polished mirror and smiling, thinking, yes, this is what I'll wear to meet Anubis. Historians still puzzle over the presence of so many beauty tools in tombs of men. Was it vanity ritual? Or did these items hold broader, significant symbols of status piety, or simply love for the rituals of daily life? The lines blur. You step outside into the light again, squinting as the sun greets you like an old friend. And as the dust settles around your sandals, you realize beauty for the ancient Egyptians was never fleeting. It was eternal, portable, spiritual. Even death couldn't stop the ritual. Back in the land of the living, your day takes a luxurious turn. You're no longer lounging in your modest courtyard. Now, you've stepped into a private chamber of the elite, a high-ranking priestess perhaps, or a minor noble whose beauty regimen deserves its own room, its own staff, and maybe even its own hymn. This is no rushed morning routine. It's a spa ritual Egyptian style. The air is heavy with the scent of rosewater and marjoram. A young servant waves a palm frond fan rhythmically stirring the air like a lullaby. Nearby, a copper basin steams faintly filled with hot water and petals. Welcome to the Pharaoh's secret spa. You sit on a linen cushioned stool as two attendants begin the slow, deliberate cleansing ritual. They start with a rinse water poured from elegant ceramic jars over your arms and shoulders. You shiver not from the temperature, but from the sheer indulgence. This is water drawn from a sacred well. It's not just clean, it's blessed. Then comes the scrub. A coarse paste made from sand and honey is rubbed into your skin to remove dead cells and whatever dignity you still had clinging to your elbows. You smell like a dessert left out in a sandstorm, but you glow. The massage follows. Moringa oil, thick and fragrant, is kneaded into your shoulders. The servant's thumbs press precisely where your tension lives, possibly leftover from that botched eyeliner flick this morning. Every movement is part of a sacred choreography, tuned not just to relax your muscles, but to purify your spirit. Historians still argue whether these spa-like practices were widespread or reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Some murals suggest even lower-class women had access to similar rituals on festival days. Others insist this level of indulgence was strictly for those with enough linen to spare. And don't forget the masks. A blend of clay honey and mashed sycamore fig is spread across your face. It hardens gently, pulling your skin taut. You feel like a statue, a very fragrant statue. The aesthetic is divine and slightly sticky. While the mask sets, your nails are buffed with a smooth pebble. This isn't about shine, it's about polish in the broader sense. Presentation, respectability, readiness. One curious note, elite women were sometimes scented internally as well. Delicate pastes of herbs and oil consumed or inserted were believed to infuse the body with sweetness from within. Cleopatra allegedly had her servants scent the sails of her ship. Imagine what she did for herself. And while the spa was private, it was not solitary. Gossip flowed with the rosewater. Who had the best henna? Whose wig had imported curls? Who mixed her kohl too thick and came out looking like a startled baboon? In the background, a musician plucks a gentle tune from a lyre, just enough to mask your laughter. The mask is removed with soft linen cloths soaked in milk and honey. Your face feels refreshed. Your soul a little lighter. You stretch luxuriously, glancing at your mirror, which now shows not just your features, but your transformation. You are softened, smoothed, lifted beyond your station, if only for a moment. And the divine closer than ever. One final touch, a dab of perfume lotus and cinnamon behind your ears. The room hushes just for a second, as if even the gods are leaning in to inhale. The scent of incense trails you as you step through the temple's stone threshold feet, brushing over cool alabaster. Here, in this shadowed sanctuary, beauty takes on its most reverent form. You're not here to pamper yourself. You're here to pamper the gods. And make no mistake, the gods expect to be pampered. The air inside is thick with sacred oils. Frankincense curls from copper burners. Acolytes murmur prayers as they prepare their ritual tools, delicate brushes, stone jars, and cloths soaked in myrrh. At the center of it all stands a statue of the deity, immense, radiant, immobile. and in desperate need of a touch-up. You take your place among the priestesses. Today's duty, anointing and adorning the god. Not symbolically, physically. This divine statue will be cleaned, perfumed, painted, dressed. You are giving the gods a spa day, and you'd better do it right. You begin by dabbing scented water on the statue's face, brushing away imaginary dust. Then comes the oil, usually a blend of lotus myrrh and cinnamon, rubbed gently into stone cheeks and arms. Next, makeup. That same green malachite shadow you used earlier. It now graces the eyelids of Horus. The same kohl lines your own eyes and those of the divine. It's a powerful moment of reflection. Historians still argue whether the makeup was intended to animate the statues or simply maintain ritual purity. Some texts suggest the daily adornment was meant to honor the gods by mirroring ideal beauty. Others claim it actually imbued the statues with temporary life. And yes, some statues had wigs. Luxurious braided wigs woven from human hair, or fine fibers placed carefully atop carved heads. The divine liked volume, apparently. You unroll a new linen garment for the deity, freshly laundered and possibly scented with mint. Robbing the gods was serious business, every fold, every tuck symbolic. The color mattered too. White for purity, blue for creation, gold for the flesh of the gods. Offerings are placed at the statue's feet. Loaves of bread, bowls of honey, bundles of herbs, and of course, cosmetic jars. Beauty wasn't just for people. It was for eternity. You catch your reflection in a polished bronze plate as you step back. You and the statue, you both gleam. There's something strangely humbling about it. You, a mortal, borrowing tools of glamour to serve the divine, and the gods draped in your colors, outlined in your pigments, still and silent and somehow deeply present. Curiously, even tomb inscriptions included prayers for divine cosmetics, a plea to the gods to continue gifting beauty in the afterlife. May my eyes be lined with kohl in the field of reeds. As far as priorities go, that's hard to argue with. And here's the fringe belief. Some priests claimed that the gods taught humans to beautify themselves. That kohl was not an invention, but a revelation. That perfume was divinely gifted, a scented bridge between heaven and earth. You stand silently for a moment longer, watching, as another priest applies a finishing touch to the statue, a dab of red ochre on the lips, the faintest smile carved in shadow. And then, like all sacred acts, it ends with stillness. The statue gleams. The incense burns low. You bow your head not out of fear, but out of deep, fragrant reverence. You return home beneath the heavy gold of the afternoon sun, kohl still crisp at the corners of your eyes, perfume lingering like a loyal shadow. You slip out of your ceremonial linen and into something lighter, cooler. But your beauty rituals, those stay with you because they were never meant for show alone. They were for the soul, and they were for everyone. Yes, everyone. You look across the courtyard and see your younger brother inspecting his own reflection in a piece of burnished copper. He's got a kohl stick in hand, slightly unsure of the angle, but committed to the vibe. In ancient Egypt, beauty didn't stop at gender lines. It walked confidently right over them. Men wore makeup. Men wore perfume. Men plucked and powdered and shaved and styled, not in secret, in public, in temples, on the battlefield. Beauty was universal because it was sacred, and sacred duties didn't discriminate. You hand your brother a smoother kohl stick and gently adjust the angle of his elbow. A few strokes later, he's got the classic Egyptian look, sharp lines, elongated eyes, a gaze worthy of any mural. He grins. You grin. Symmetry achieved. Historians still argue how common this was among non-elite men. Tomb art certainly shows kohl-lined eyes and jeweled collars on male figures, but some scholars believe it was largely ceremonial or reserved for special occasions. Others insist it was daily, just as routine as eating or praying, but even everyday men wore scented oils, especially before festivals or long journeys. The sun might burn your shoulders, but it wouldn't dry out your style. Your father, a scribe, steps in from the street. You catch a whiff of almond oil as he brushes past. His beard is neatly trimmed, lined subtly with henna. His nails recently buffed. In fact, henna use among men was common, especially among priests and scribes, not just for aesthetics, but for spiritual cleanliness. You weren't preparing to look good. You were preparing to be worthy. And the gods, also not picky about gendered beauty. Temple rituals applied makeup and perfume to male and female deities alike. If Bastet and Ra both appreciate a good eyeliner flick, why shouldn't you? Your little cousin runs past, face smeared with what might have been your red ochre. You sigh. Artistic theft begins early. You think back to murals where kings and queens stand side by side. Their looks nearly identical, wigs, makeup, jewelry. Pharaohs, goddesses, priests, and princesses. The beauty code didn't bend toward binary roles. It orbited balance, harmony, presentation. Even gender-fluid representations existed, especially in depictions of gods. Adam, for instance, was sometimes shown as encompassing both male and female qualities. And certain rituals invited participants to embody different aspects of the divine, regardless of birth sex. If divinity was fluid, why shouldn't beauty be? There's a freedom in that. A soft, ancient confidence that says, line your eyes where your oil glow in every spectrum of sunlight. The gods won't mind. In fact, they'll probably take notes. You settle into your shaded spot again, the mirror catching one last glint of afternoon gold. You, your brother, your whole fragrant henna-smeared household, you are all part of the same tradition. Because in this world, beauty isn't confined. It's shared. It's sacred. It's you. The breeze from the Nile carries more than just the scent of lotus flowers. It carries whispers from far-off lands. Myrrh from Punt Lapis Lazuli from Afghanistan. Cinnamon from India. Ebony from Nubia. Your beauty routine, if you're paying attention, is basically a travel log. You sit beside your cosmetic box, fingers tracing the painted scenes on its lid, tiny ships, animals, hieroglyphs depicting distant gifts. The box itself is made from imported cedar, smooth and fragrant, and inside a rainbow of foreign treasures. Beauty in ancient Egypt wasn't just local, it was global. You start with the lapis, deep blue ground into powder and mixed with fat or oil to make eyeshadow or liner. This wasn't easy to come by. Traders journeyed for months across deserts to bring this stone to your temple steps. A single pinch of it on your eyelids connects you to mountains far beyond the Red Sea. Luxury, yes, also sacred. Then there's myrrh, resin from small thorny trees in East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. It arrived in sealed pouches, sticky, fragrant, and prized. Myrrh was used in unguents, perfumes, and even as incense to purify beauty spaces. You mix a little into warm oil and massage it into your arms. The scent wraps around you like a spell. Historians still argue how much access everyday Egyptians had to these imports. Some believe only the elite could afford them. Others point to evidence of diluted versions less potent, but still used in middle-class homes. In truth, the line was likely blurry. Beauty trickled down, even if the lapis was swapped for local azurite. Your favorite comb, carved from ivory, brought down the Nile. Your pigment grinder, a basalt stone rumored to be from Syria. Even your favorite perfumed balm contains cinnamon bark, a spice that came a very long way to grace your skin. Trade routes were arteries of culture. Ships from Byblos, caravans from the Levant, all bringing not just goods, but new rituals, new ideas. A different way to paint the lips. A new shade of ochre. A better oil blend for oily skin, as documented in one preserved scroll, with surprisingly practical advice. And let's not forget faience jewelry, those glazed blue beads imitating turquoise and lapis. They shimmer under sunlight and cost far less than the real thing. Ancient dupes. The fashion gods smiled upon knockoffs. Sometimes the items were gifts, tributes from foreign lands to the pharaoh, who then redistributed them to favored nobles and Haldan temples. You, as a temple priestess, get the second-hand luxury, but it's no less meaningful. You think about Cleopatra, who centuries from now will reportedly send emissaries across the sea for the rarest oils and resins. She'll make perfume not just a ritual, but a declaration of power. But even in your simpler courtyard, surrounded by bowls and brushes, you know this truth. Your makeup is an empire. Each jar, each scent, each shimmer carries a map of ancient connections. You are painting your face with diplomacy, with faith, with geography. You smooth a final dab of imported almond oil across your collarbone, watching the skin catch the late light. A merchant outside calls out new arrivals, fresh cedar, new saffron, possibly some crushed coral. You make a note to visit. Because tomorrow's look might need just a touch of Syria. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat, flipping through a set of ancient recipes written in faded ink on crumbling papyrus. Some are straightforward. Blend 1 part myrrh with 2 parts almond oil. Others are more poetic. Let the lotus sleep in honey till dawn, then anoint the cheeks of Ra's daughter. But then there's that one, the controversial one. The one everyone claims to know, but no one can quite prove. Cleopatra's skin cream. Historians still argue about its ingredients, its purpose, and even its existence. Was it a daily moisturizer? A seduction tool? A pharmaceutical concoction designed to fight wrinkles and charm Roman generals? No one agrees, but the rumors won't die. Some texts say her recipe included donkey milk, famous for its softening properties. Others add honey, rosewater, crushed pearls, even gold dust. One particularly fringe theory claims she used fermented crocodile bile, which sounds bold even for a queen. You try mixing your own version. A bit of rose oil, a drop of vinegar, some crushed almond. You dab it on your skin and sniff. Floral, sharp, oddly comforting. Would Caesar have swooned? Who knows? Maybe. What makes it so fascinating isn't just the ingredients, it's the obsession. Cleopatra, last of the Ptolemies icon of allure, becomes the mythical origin of skincare. Never mind that earlier queens also had elaborate routines. She just branded hers better. Some scholars argue that the recipes attributed to her were retroactively created beauty propaganda wrapped in papyrus. Others insist the documentation, thin as it is, points to a real routine grounded in Greek-Egyptian fusion science. You smear another version on your arm. This one includes sour milk and honey. It smells like a dessert gone slightly rogue, but it leaves your skin glowing. So maybe they were onto something. Here's the wild bit. In the 1st century CE, a Roman physician named Galen claimed to have recreated Cleopatra's cold cream. His version, beeswax olive oil and rose water, is still considered the prototype for modern face creams, which means your night routine might just be 2,000 years old. Of course, there are skeptics. Some say none of this was hers, that it's all a projection of exotic allure, part of the long tradition of turning Cleopatra into a symbol rather than a person. A seductress, a chemist, a queen in her bath, always glowing, but rarely seen for who she really was. You glance into your mirror, freshly polished, catching your reflection, framed in afternoon shadow. Cleopatra's cream, real or imagined, still shapes how we think of beauty. Legacy, sealed in myth and oil. Even modern brands name drop her promising queenly radiance or Ptolemaic glow in their marketing. Historians sigh, marketers cheer. Cleopatra, somewhere in the field of reeds, likely smirks. You stretch your legs, letting your skin drink in the last of the cream. It's a little sticky, a little fragrant, and somehow deeply satisfying. Whether it came from Alexandria or Avon, you're now part of the same long, luxurious line. The recipe might be lost, the truth debated, but the ritual remains. The mirror on your lap wobbles slightly as you shift positions. You're not in an ancient courtyard anymore. You're in a modern bathroom, or maybe curled on a couch, ring light, nearby skincare products arranged like miniature pyramids. And as you massage your nightly serum into your cheeks, a thought lingers. This feels familiar. That's because it is. Your toner might come in a sleek bottle, and your moisturizer might list peptides and SPF 30. But beneath the glossy packaging lies the same human impulse to soothe, to adorn, to connect ritual with identity. Ancient Egypt isn't dead. It's been quietly living in your vanity drawer. You pick up an eyeliner pen and draw a winged flick. It's not quite coal, and it's certainly not ground galena, but the shape unmistakable. Cleopatra would approve, or maybe she'd critique your symmetry. Either way, you're channeling 5,000 years of glam in one steady swoop. You spritz perfume behind your ears. Synthetic, sure, but it's still a scent. You chose one that says something about who you are and how you want to move through the world. Ancient Egyptians did the same. Scents were signatures. Now we call them fragrance notes. Then they called them offerings. Historians still argue how directly our beauty practices descend from ancient ones. Some insist it's a coincidence, a cultural echo, rather than a lineage. Others see clear lines: rose oil from Egypt to Rome to France to your bedside diffuser. Let's talk trends. Sheet masks, reminiscent of linen wraps soaked in herbal blends. Clay masks, they had them. Exfoliation, absolutely. Even clean beauty had a precursor in their emphasis on natural oils and plant extracts. And the ritual of application, the careful strokes, the layered steps, the quiet moment at the mirror, is timeless. Whether you're preparing for a TikTok video or a temple offering, the feeling is oddly the same. You're tending to yourself, and that matters. Here's a quirky modern fact. Some luxury spas now recreate Egyptian beauty rituals, offering treatments with milk, honey, and myrrh. Cleopatra facials, Nile mud wraps, even body oils inspired by papyrus scrolls. It's ancient branding at its finest. You sip from your water bottle, metal, not clay, and scroll through a skincare forum. Someone's asking about natural alternatives to retinol. Someone else is praising the soothing effect of frankincense oil. You smile. The conversation hasn't really changed in millennia, just the platform. Even the tools echo the past. Beauty blenders have an oddly familiar shape. Jade rollers mimic the massage stones found in burial tombs. Lip stains, red ochre rebranded. And the obsession, that hasn't changed either. Ancient scrolls advised on wrinkle cures. So does your favorite YouTube channel. Beauty influencers existed then too, though they were more likely to be priests or royal attendants, whispering formulas behind temple doors. You lean closer to the mirror, not to judge, but to admire. The glow is different tonight. Maybe it's the oil, maybe it's the lineage. Because when you trace your fingers across your cheek, you're not just applying product, you're brushing history. Thousands of years of practice, persistence, and pleasure distilled into one quiet moment. The jars have changed, the faces too, but the ritual, still sacred. The sun is nearly gone now, its last golden threads retreating behind the palms, casting your courtyard. Or is it your bathroom in the soft hush of evening? You sit once more before your mirror, not out of vanity or duty, but something deeper. This is the final ritual of the day. One last look before dreams. You reach for a pot of oil, almond rose, maybe a touch of myrrh, and warm it between your palms. It smells like peace. With slow, practiced strokes, you press it into your face, your neck, your shoulders. The scent is both ancient and immediate, a time capsule in every drop. Your fingers know the path from brow to cheek, along the jaw, down the collarbone. Each motion, a quiet act of care, a lullaby written in touch. And though your room is quiet, you're not alone. You can almost hear them, priestesses preparing for festival nights, mothers tending to their daughters, a queen brushing oil into her skin before a meeting with Rome. Their hands move with yours. You reach for your mirror. The copper has dulled slightly in the evening light, but it still catches enough glow to reflect your features. Not perfect, never perfect, but complete, real, timeless. A breeze stirs the linen draped nearby. You remember the priest who dabbed coal onto a statue's face, or the young girl who stained her nails with henna, giggling at the mess. You remember the trader who brought lapis through the desert, the servant who melted wax cones onto noble scalps, the scribe who made balm with goat tallow and fig sap. Beauty wasn't always beautiful, but it always meant something. You light a small lamp, just one flame, and everything turns to gold. Your hands pause. This is the end of the routine, the end of the ritual. You've traveled from the Nile to the now, from pigment to perfume, from myth to moisturizer. And in this moment, between wakefulness and sleep, you feel the echo of 1,000 routines like yours. Beauty, not as performance, but as prayer. A soft invocation whispered through oils and powders. A way of saying I am here. I am alive. I am luminous. You lie back, skin still warm from the last touch of oil, limbs heavy with the comfort of repetition. The day's dust is gone. The mirror is put away. The night begins. So now, just breathe. Let your body melt into whatever you're resting on. Feel the softness under your skin, the way your breath eases in and out. No effort at all. The rituals are complete. The pots are closed. The oil has soaked in. You've traveled far across deserts and dynasties, through temples and tombs, through fragrance and flame. And yet, here you are in the quiet now, where nothing is required of you. The gods are silent. The coal has dried. The mirror reflects only the lamp's flicker. Let your thoughts drift like incense, rising and curling and vanishing into the dark. You are tended to. You are enough. You are still. The beauty secrets of ancient Egypt weren't just about skin. They were about soul, about harmony, about leaving the world just a little more fragrant than you found it. So close your eyes. Let the last image be a flickering lamp and a breeze that smells like lotus. Tomorrow will come. The oils will wait. But for now, just sleep. Sweet dreams. And just as the scent of cinnamon fades from your fingertips and the last smear of ochre settles into the creases of your palm, you find yourself wondering, what did the queens wear? What did she wear? Because behind every oil-stained jar, every flick of the coal stick, and every whispered prayer for beauty, there is one name, Nefertiti. Not just the queen of style, but of silence, of glow, of mystery. Tonight we leave the public courtyards and scented tombs behind and slip deeper into the palace. Past the columns, past the guards, into the chambers where recipes are whispered, not written, where balm is memory. And mirrors don't just reflect, but decide. Let's follow the scent, shall we? You're just waking up from a nap, though. Calling it a nap feels generous. It was more of a brief collapse into sleep, your head tilted against a palm wood beam in the servants' quarter. The heat hasn't lifted, not really, but the sun's dip below the limestone horizon casts the walls of Akhenaten in cooler tones, muted lavender terracotta, and that ever-present gold dust that seems to linger in the very air. A shout, gentle but firm, jolts you. One of the queen's stewards, an older woman named Tieni, is beckoning. You stand too fast, knees creaking, and follow her through corridors that smell of myrrh and baked reeds. You pass an open courtyard where a cat eyes you lazily from a sun-warmed statue of the god Bes. You're summoned tonight to assist in a task rarely entrusted to novices. The queen's evening preparations are elaborate. It's not just face paint and perfume. It's belief, legacy, protection from the wrath of time itself. The phrase whispered among staff is the nightly embalming, and though exaggerated, it isn't far off. You enter the royal suite through a beaded curtain, each bead a carved shell dyed with ochre and lapis. The room is dim. Oil lamps flicker behind filigreed shades. A low stone basin in the center holds water from the Nile, blessed, filtered through papyrus mesh and perfumed with crushed hibiscus. The walls are painted with scenes from the queen's youth, she holding an ankh, offering incense, receiving rays from the sun, god Aten. Nefertiti believed in ritual purity, in the literal cleansing of the day's sins and sunburns, a mixture of vanity and theology, or perhaps something deeper. Historians still argue whether these nightly routines were purely cosmetic or half-mystic defense. Tieni gestures toward a stool, and you take your place next to a long table crowded with jars, pestles, folded cloths. You notice a bowl with a faintly glowing paste, some sort of luminescent resin from a tree you've never seen, said to ooze only during new moons. Your task is first to hold still, as Cheney ladles warm water into your cupped hands. You're to anoint the tools, horn spoons, alabaster spatulas, with the water, a kind of pre-blessing. The jars know, she says cryptically. If you don't cleanse them, they'll spoil the blend. As you wipe down a curved obsidian scraper, your mind wanders. What is the queen preparing for? She's already considered a living goddess. Her face graces temple columns. Some say even her reflection bends toward her in reverence. And yet here she is, nightly layering her skin with mixtures more closely guarded than Pharaoh's battle plans. And then you hear her voice. Not directly, just an echo, a soft laugh from the inner chamber. You glimpse a silhouette moving behind a linen screen. Nefertiti is not alone. There are others attendants like you, but seasoned, dressed in robes dyed so deep a blue they appear black. One hums an old tune, something from Upper Egypt. It's out of place here in this northern capital built for Aten worship. But no one corrects her. It's the queen's night after all. You reach for a jar of frankincense powder and catch your reflection in the copper dish beside it. Your hands, once rough from hauling fishnets, now tremble beside royal ointments. You're part of something vast and strange, a nightly ritual whose origin even the eldest court sages pretend to understand. Outside, a breeze carries in the scent of baking barley and far-off river mud. The city may be new, its bricks barely settled, but the night sky remains ancient, familiar, endless. And under that sky, a queen prepares not for battle or council, but for sleep, with an arsenal of creams, chants, and shadows. The scent of crushed lotus hits you first heady soft and oddly spicy. Tonight, you're tasked with grinding the raw ingredients for the queen's nightly balm, and the petals must be handled delicately. A single bruise on the leaf, and the scent shifts too bitter, too herbal. You kneel beside a low grinding slab made of black basalt and pour the contents of a reed basket onto its surface. Dried petals flutter out like moths. Beside you, a bowl of sandalwood shavings waits, glowing warm gold in the lamplight. The two ingredients aren't simply for fragrance. This, you're told, is about balance. The lotus is cool, spiritual. The sandalwood, earthy and stabilizing. Blended properly, the balm not only soothes, but connects the queen to her divine essence, at least according to the high priestess of Hathor, who popped in earlier to remind everyone of that fact. You add a trickle of warm water, Then a few drops of blue lotus oil prized not just for its aroma, but its faintly narcotic properties. Modern scholars would point out that the oil contains compounds similar to a porphine, a sedative. But you're not thinking about chemistry. You're watching as the mixture thickens under your pestle, darkening to a pale mauve, the texture somewhere between cream and clay, and ion. Across from you, another attendant stirs a separate concoction, something resinous, sticky. You catch a whiff of it and feel slightly lightheaded. "Don't lean in," she says with a wry grin. "That one's for muscle cramps, not dreams." A sharp pop makes you jump. Behind you, a lump of myrrh resin just cracked in the brazier, releasing a curl of smoke that dances toward the painted ceiling. The scent mingles with the others, wrapping the room in a tapestry of aromas. You find yourself slowing, matching the unhurried rhythm of the palace night. You're handed a new ingredient, unfamiliar, translucent. "That's camel bone gelatin," Tijani explains. "Melted and purified. Makes the balm spread smoother." You blink. It doesn't smell like anything. Just cold. But under the pestle, it disappears like ice into wine. The ingredients keep coming. A splash of date syrup for stickiness, crushed barley for exfoliation, a pinch of natron, a cleansing salt once used to prepare mummies. You glance at the bowl uneasily. "Only a pinch," Chenny reassures. "Unless you want Her Majesty's face to tighten like an embalmed toe." She chuckles at her own joke. You stifle a laugh and keep grinding. At one point, you notice a cluster of tiny, pale green seeds in a copper dish. Fenugreek, the older attendant tells you, for softness and to keep away the flies. You can't tell if she's serious. She usually isn't. Somewhere deeper in the chamber, the queen's voice rises briefly, issuing a command. A servant rushes past with a tray of almonds. You're not sure if they're for eating or pressing into oil. Possibly both. In this palace, there's little distinction between kitchen and apothecary. You add the final ingredients and set the pestle aside. The balm is nearly done, a soft, glossy cream with hints of rose smoke and something faintly metallic. You pause watching as the surface settles, forming tiny ripples that catch the lamplight like desert dunes. The queen won't use it tonight, not yet. First, it must cool. It will be poured into a small alabaster jar, sealed with beeswax, and placed beside her on a lacquered tray, along with her combs, coal stick, and a sachet of dried mint leaves she keeps beneath her pillow. You look at your hands. They're stained pink from the lotus petals. Your nails gleam with oil. You smell like you belong to someone else, someone royal. Historians still argue whether these elaborate cosmetic rituals were entirely about appearance or if they held deeper significance, perhaps shielding the queen from spiritual contamination illness, or simply the prying eyes of political rivals. After all, in a court this new and volatile, even a wrinkle might be seen as weakness. A final task, you scrape the excess cream from the slab into a shell dish. It's too much to waste. Later, you'll rub it into your own arms. Not because you believe it will make you radiant, but because you can't help but hope. You carry the shell dish carefully, the balm wobbling slightly as you walk, and set it down beside a row of alabaster jars. These are no ordinary containers. Each is shaped like a different deity. Hathor with her cow's ears, Sekhmet with her lioness glare, and Toweret, the hippo goddess of protection during childbirth. You wonder idly what protection a jar can offer. But then again, in this palace, everything has double meaning. The jars are surprisingly cold to the touch. You brush your fingers against one carved with palm fronds and notice it bears an inscription in tiny meticulous hieroglyphs. For the sacred skin of the great wife of the living Aten. That's Nefertiti, of course. Not just queen, but divine consort. She isn't merely pampered, she's venerated. You pop open one of the jars and peer inside. The scent hits you immediately, rich, fatty, and a bit swampy. You wrinkle your nose. Crocodile fat. Rendered and purified, it's used as a base for many ointments. Supposedly, it nourishes the skin and wards off sun damage. You've heard priests claim that it's imbued with the crocodile's resilience, its power to slip between worlds. You mostly think it smells like low tide. Next to it is a more pleasant jar filled with date paste. It's glossy and dark, like melted gold dusted with cinnamon. Dates mashed with honey and fig seed oil are believed to plump the skin and banish dryness. Plus, they're sweet enough to distract from the less glamorous scents of crocodilian grease. You move on to a tiny pot with a lid shaped like a cobra's hood. Inside is a chalky green powder malachite ground to dust. It's meant for the eyes, both decorative and medicinal. Worn around the eyelids, it reflects sunlight, reduces glare, and even deters infection. Or so they say. Historians still argue whether the use of malachite and galena was more aesthetic or protective, especially in a climate that's as much dust as daylight. You pause, letting the flickering lamp cast shadows over the jars. There's something oddly comforting about them. Each one carefully labeled, lovingly handled, and sealed with beeswax or linen. This isn't just skincare, it's curation. Like a library of the body's needs, every solution tucked into alabaster. One jar makes you laugh aloud quietly, of course. It's shaped like a dwarf riding a fish. You know that figure, a fertility god named Bes, protector of households. The cream inside is rumored to boost cheek glow. You're skeptical. Still, the queen swears by it, especially before major ceremonies. There's a rustle behind you, and you turn to find a scribe kneeling by the wall, writing in a narrow notebook. You hadn't noticed him enter. He's recording ingredients, weights, timings. Nothing is left to chance. The formula must remain exact. Even if its users don't age, the recipe surely will fading with each missed detail. You catch a glimpse of a phrase he writes, skin unwrinkled as lotus leaves. Poetic, if a bit optimistic. Suddenly, a soft chime sounds 3 notes struck gently on a miniature sistrum. It's the signal. The queen is ready. Tieni motions to you. You lift the selected jars 3 tonight and place them on an ebony tray inlaid with ivory. Your hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. Each step toward the queen's chamber feels like a descent deeper into something ancient sacred and oddly soothing. The chamber smells like rosewater now. The air is thick with steam from a copper pot bubbling beside a dish of eucalyptus leaves. You pass under another linen veil and see her Queen Nefertiti sitting cross-legged on a low couch, her silhouette haloed by a golden fan. Her face is bare for now, and impossibly symmetrical. She doesn't look up as you approach. Instead, she holds out her hands, palms open. You kneel and place the jars beside her. She nods once. Dismissed. You back away slowly, leaving her alone with the oils, the masks, the centuries of secrets. You're summoned again, but this time not for mixing or grinding. A servant named Rawi passes you a bundle wrapped in linen, carefully, reverently. Inside is the Queen's mirror, and tonight it needs polishing. Not for vanity, Tieni insists, but for clarity. She must see herself. She mutters exactly as the gods do. The mirror is not made of glass. That doesn't exist yet. Not in a way the Queen would trust. Instead, it's polished copper, beaten flat and curved just slightly to soften the reflection. It gleams like rose gold sunlight, though right now it's speckled with prints and smudges from last night's ritual. You carry it to the basin and set to work with a tiny ball of cloth dipped in crushed chalk and olive oil. The smudges resist at first, then melt away under your careful circles. Gradually, the surface comes alive, reflecting your face, distorted and reddish but whole. You can't help but wonder how often Nefertiti stares into this exact metal, how many thoughts it's absorbed. While you work, you overhear murmured conversations. Attendants discussing the latest edict, something about lengthening the market hours in Akhenaten. So, we bake longer and sleep less, one mutters, dabbing her forehead. Another mentions a new mural being painted in the temple courtyard, showing the Queen holding both scepter and mirror. Symbol of balance, she says. Rule and reflection. Historians still argue whether such depictions were mere flattery or actual political statements. Once the mirror gleams to perfection, you bring it into the Queen's inner room. It's dark in here, save for one oil lamp on a slender stand. Nefertiti sits near it, braiding her hair, the motion slow and rhythmic. She doesn't speak, but she gestures toward a polished wooden stand. You set the mirror down. She turns her head just slightly, catching her own eye in the copper. It's hard to describe what happens next, but the room seems to still. She studies her reflection, not with vanity, but with purpose, like someone consulting an oracle. You can see her face clearly now. It's the same one carved into sandstone on the city gates, yet more fragile here. Up close, she is beautiful, yes, but not ethereal. Her skin is flushed from the heat, her lashes slightly damp. Her expression unreadable. A soft thud distracts you. Someone has brought her headdress, a wide blue crown made of painted leather and gilded linen. You're called forward. She needs assistance adjusting it. You approach heart-thudding and gently lift the headdress, aligning the central band with her brow. It's heavier than you expect. She doesn't flinch. The crown is symbolic. It's shaped like no other in Egypt, and scholars still debate whether it signified her co-regency with Akhenaten or something else entirely, perhaps her own divine identity. Tonight, though, it's a sleep crown, not worn for court or ceremony, but for the final stage of her transformation from sovereign to goddess in repose. As you settle it into place, She tilts her head slightly, inspecting the result. A tiny nod. Approval. Then she waves her hand. You're dismissed once more. Outside, you exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. The mirror, the crown, the silence, it all swirls in your mind like incense smoke. You've seen Nefertiti at her most unguarded, and yet she remains untouchable, just out of reach. You return the cloths to their jar, wash your hands, and sit near the brazier. Another attendant offers you a fig stuffed with cheese. You eat it in one bite. No one says it aloud, but everyone feels that tonight's preparation is different. There's something weightier in the air. Maybe it's the season's turn, or maybe, just maybe, it's the recipe itself. Changed, enchanted. You watch as a scribe passes, eyes downcast, scroll tucked under one arm. He pauses by the queen's chamber, listens for a heartbeat, then moves on. Even in silence, Nefertiti commands the night. It's nearly midnight when you're summoned once more. This time to the temple annex, a quiet domed chamber attached to the palace by a winding corridor that smells of sun-warmed papyrus and rain that hasn't fallen in months. This room isn't on any official map, and yet it's known to every servant who's ever whispered a prayer before risking a mistake. You're here to receive something rare, the words of a priestess. Not a public sermon, not a chant bellowed in a teen's praise, but a hushed recipe passed from palm to palm like a spell. She stands barefoot on a woven mat, her robe dyed in saffron and dusted with clove ash, anointing a tiny statue with oil. She doesn't look at you at first, just begins speaking in a tone so soft you have to lean in. The balm must be stirred counterclockwise, she murmurs, or it wakes the skin too quickly. You nod, not because you understand, but because understanding seems optional here. The priestess is ancient, or seems it. Her skin is folded like a date's, her voice as dry as the Nile bank after harvest. She carries a papyrus scroll, but it remains tightly rolled, untouched. She walks you through the components again, but in a different order than before, reverse symbolic, layered with metaphors. Lotus is moonlight, she says. Galena is night. Frankincense, the whisper of memory. You're not sure what's meant literally anymore. She hands you a scrap of cloth soaked in spikenard and instructs you to press it to your forehead. You obey. The scent blooms in your skull, sharp and comforting, all at once. Repeat it back, she commands. You try. Lotus is moonlight. Galena is night. Frankincense? Memory. She nods once. Good enough. Then she unrolls the scroll just a bit, enough for you to see a diagram. Not of a face or a formula, but a tree. Its roots tangled around tiny jars, its branches reaching toward a star. The recipe isn't written, she says. It's remembered in layers. One ingredient changes depending on the queen's dreams. That's why we listen. You're still reeling from that when she gestures toward a low stool. You sit. She dips her fingers into a small bowl of gold-flecked oil and begins painting symbols on your wrist. Tiny birds reads a rising sun. This protects the blend, she says. If you forget a step, it fades. But if you remember it in your sleep, she doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. Historians still argue whether these private temple rites were religious rituals or early forms of perfumery training. Some claim these oils and balms held psychoactive properties, inducing vivid dreams or altered awareness. Others say it was all metaphor, nothing more than pageantry wrapped in incense. But sitting there, as the oil soaks into your skin and the temple walls seem to pulse with breath, you feel it. Something deeper, older. You bow when she dismisses you, unsure if she saw, unsure if it matters. Back in the palace, Sheeny greets you with a nod, eyes briefly flicking to the symbols on your wrist. She doesn't ask what was said. She doesn't need to. You return to your quarters, and for a moment you consider washing your hands. But you don't. You let the oils linger. Let the symbols remain. Let the night carry you forward, steeped in whispers and secrets older than stone. You're sent out into the night, a rare privilege, though it doesn't feel like one. The courtyard bricks are still warm under your sandals, and the desert air hangs heavy with something too dry to be refreshing. But the queen has made a request: fresh galena and turquoise, and there's only one place to find it at this hour: the miner's pavilion, tucked behind the artisan's quarters, half hidden by a stand of acacia trees. You move quickly, guided by lamplight and memory. The palace at night feels both endless and hollow, like the inside of a seashell. Every step echoes. Every column you pass seems to whisper. As you reach the edge of the gardens, you glance upward. The sky is unusually clear, so much so that the Milky Way paints a chalky trail across the heavens. The moon hangs low and sharp, bathing the courtyard in silver. It glints off the stone pools where lotus flowers are folded in sleep, their petals tight as fists. You pass a stone bench where someone's left a jar of dates half-eaten, swarming with sugar ants. Life in the palace doesn't stop for beauty. It spills out in forgotten snacks, laundry, flapping in the breeze, and cats, always cats, curled on statues of Aten. Finally, you reach the pavilion. It's quiet, except for the rhythmic tap of chisels. Even now, artisans are shaping beads, hammering pigment into dust. You're greeted by a man named Mena, whose hands are perpetually blue from lapis. He nods when you mention the queen's request. No need to explain why she needs fresh galena. Everyone knows. He offers you a shallow dish filled with dark, crumbly powder. It's been sitting in shade, he says. Still cool. You nod your thanks, and he gestures toward another shelf. Take a sliver of turquoise, too. The last batch was too dull. You pick through the stones until you find one the color of a Nile at dusk, bright, cold, and smooth to the touch. It reminds you of her eyes. Not the shape, but the sharpness. As you make your way back, you pause by the reflecting pool. Not out of necessity, but habit. The water is dark still, and for a moment you see yourself not as a servant, not even as a person, but as a moving part in something vast. A line in a story, be told with oils and stones, with fingers and jars. Historians still argue whether galena and turquoise were used purely for their cosmetic properties or held deeper meaning. Some claim galena's dark shimmer protected against glare and disease, while turquoise, with its celestial color, warded off evil. You've heard older workers say galena holds the night in it, while turquoise carries the first breath of morning. You continue your walk slower now, The palace has softened since you left. Lamps flicker lower. Conversations have quieted to murmurs. The sandstone walls reflect less heat and more shadow. As you pass through the servants' gate, Jenny meets you arms crossed, but eyes soft. "Still warm?" she asks. "Still," you reply, handing her the dish and the stone. She inspects them briefly and nods. "Good." Then, lowering her voice, the queen asks specifically for that turquoise. She said she dreamt of it. You don't ask how. You don't need to. In this palace, dreams carry as much weight as scrolls. You wash your hands in rose-scented water and return to your place by the table where the next blend is already underway. Tonight's balm is different. You can tell by the weight of the silence as you return to your station. No chatter from the other attendants. No teasing laughter over misshaped jars. Just the soft slosh of oil being stirred, the faint clink of alabaster against obsidian. Cheney hands you a small scoop of the fresh mixture and gestures test it. You nod, roll up your sleeve, and apply a thin streak to your forearm. At first it's cool, pleasant, almost silky. But then a faint tingle starts. Not painful exactly, but assertive, like the balm wants to be noticed. You blink and glance at the others. They're doing the same, each testing a slightly different version. It's not that the queen is fickle. It's that her skin responds differently each day, depending on weather, emotion, perhaps even astrology. One balm may soothe her on a festival night and irritate her after a simple sunset. She'll notice immediately, and she'll say something in that poised, quiet voice that makes even seasoned attendants fidget like school children. Chiene leans over your arm and examines the patch. "Slight redness," she murmurs. "Too much natron. Try the second blend." You rinse your arm in a bowl of hibiscus water and switch to a new formula. This one is heavier, richer. It sinks into the skin without complaint. You exhale. The queen has always been involved in her balms, choosing ingredients, altering proportions, even inventing new layering rituals. A younger attendant once joked that she could have been a perfumer had she not been born divine. Cheney didn't laugh. "She is a perfumer," she said. "She just wears the crown over it." You dab your new test spot again and observe. No redness. Just a faint shimmer. A good sign. In the corner, another girl hisses her blend stung too sharply, and she's blotting her arm with cloth soaked in aloe. No scolding, though. Only nods of acknowledgement. Testing is expected. Failure is tolerated. Repetition is sacred. Historians still argue whether these nightly adjustments were based on actual skin conditions or rituals of control, small acts that reaffirmed Nefertiti's sovereignty over even the subtlest parts of her world. Perhaps both. After all, when your face appears on every wall, every vase, every god's throne, you'd want control over how it glows. You hear the low click of her bedroom shutter sliding open, and a gust of desert air spills in, carrying with it the dusty coolness of midnight. You pause momentarily, distracted by the sound of a distant lyre, a musician in the outer halls, strumming something ancient and slow. You wipe your arm clean and begin repackaging the successful blend into a narrow jar. It goes sealed with a thin veil of beeswax, pressed flat with a stamp that bears the eye of Horus. Tieni lifts it and turns it slowly in the lamplight. This, she says, might be the one. no one dares smile. Not yet. Later, when the balm is presented, the queen will brush her fingers across the surface, sniff it once, and apply it in silence. If she uses more than a pinch, it's a triumph. If she sets it aside, it vanishes from the rotation. But for now, you sit quietly, forearm faintly shimmering, wondering what it feels like to be that discerning, to command a court with a glance, to turn even night cream into ceremony. With the balm finally chosen, there's a rare moment of pause. You sit cross-legged beside a shallow brazier, fanning your face with a reed scrap as the heat gently presses against your skin. The room hums with low energy, no longer frantic, but steeped in the glow of quiet achievement. That's when the gossip begins. It starts, as always, with a raised eyebrow. The junior consort asked about the balm. Again, one attendant whispers, eyes darting toward the shadowed corridor that leads to the harem wing. Her voice is honeyed with mischief. She asked if it's really made with pearls ground in goat's milk. Another rolls her eyes. Last week, it was gazelle tears. Next week, it'll be phoenix ash. You chuckle softly, but stay silent. This part, the lull after the task, is where the truth sometimes hides inside the jokes. A third attendant leans in conspiratorially. They say the queen received a potion. From a trader, foreign, not from Nubia, farther maybe even beyond Byblos. You glance up. That's new. She only uses it on her temples, the girl continues, and only during the new moon. Everyone grows quiet. It's not that the idea of foreign potions is shocking. The court trades for everything: cedar oil from Lebanon, frankincense from Punt, even sea sponges from the Aegean. But something secretive used only in darkness. That's more than skincare. That's something else. The room's energy shifts. Someone coughs into her elbow as if to break the spell. Chenny doesn't join in the gossip, but she doesn't stop it either. Instead, she continues cleaning the implements. Slow, precise, reverent. She picks up a comb carved from elephant ivory and begins brushing it with a cloth soaked in myrrh. Historians still argue whether court gossip held any real political sway. But in a palace where every gesture is watched, every scent cataloged, and every blemish examined, the line between rumor and influence was thin. Sometimes thinner than the coal-lining Nefertiti's eyes. You stretch out your legs and take the opportunity to sip from a shared cup of crushed carob tea. It's bittersweet cooling and makes your mouth feel oddly clean. Across from you, an older servant tilts her head. "Did you hear the latest?" she whispers. You brace yourself. They say the general once collapsed at court from the queen's perfume. Not in love, overwhelmed. Said it smelled like heaven melted into fire. The room erupts in laughter. You almost choke on your tea. She was testing a new scent. The woman continues, one mixed with orchid sap and vinegar. "That would do it," someone mutters. You don't know what to believe anymore. Did a general really faint from the power of scent? Could the queen's temples shimmer with imported moon elixir? Or are these just dreams stitched together from too many nights around too many jars? It doesn't matter, because tomorrow, someone new will arrive. A new scent, a new route, a new theory. And it will all fold into the same question. Everyone keeps asking silently, with wide eyes and whispered jokes, what is the queen's secret? And why does she never seem to age? The chamber hushes as the outer curtain parts. Akhenaten has entered. It isn't a dramatic arrival. No trumpets, no procession, just the soft thud of sandals and the scent of linen dried in myrrh smoke. The room stiffens slightly. Even the flickering oil lamps seem to pause. You keep your eyes down, not out of fear, but reverence. When the pharaoh walks through the queen's rooms, it's like the sun itself has changed direction. He doesn't speak. Instead, he drifts through the chamber, his presence more sensed than seen. You glimpse him only in fragments. A bronze wrist, a swish of gold-trimmed robe, a bare foot etched with sandal straps, and then a flicker of movement. Nefertiti steps forward from the shadows, resplendent but unpainted, her face bare, her skin luminous, no balm yet, just the raw, well-tended canvas. Their eyes meet. Akhenaten leans closer, examining her face as if it holds secrets he has yet to translate. Then slowly he touches her cheek. It's a gesture, neither romantic nor detached, somewhere between study and devotion. As if he's confirming something. You notice it too. Her skin glows not like polished stone or gilded crown, but like a morning sky caught in a bowl of milk. Supple, warm, soft. The balm has not even been applied yet. Her radiance is already complete. He murmurs something too low to catch, and then he's gone as quietly as he arrived. You exhale without realizing you'd been holding your breath. The queen turns expression unreadable. Her calm remains unshaken, but you can't help wondering what he said. Was it praise, concern? A question about the blend. Tieni returns to the table, whispering, "He's using it too, you know." You blink. He takes a different version, for dryness and dreams. It makes sense in a way. If anyone understands the power of ritual, it's Akhenaten. He who changed the gods moved. The capital rewrote the heavens with rays of the Aten. Of course, he'd seek to control his own body's narrative to shine as divinely as his consort. Historians still argue whether Akhenaten truly shared in Nefertiti's regimens or simply mirrored them for effect. Some claim he believed it helped him commune with Aten more directly, that softened skin made for a better vessel of divine light. Others say he simply envied her glow. You think back to that single touch, how deliberate it seemed. Like a man checking the edge of a blade he forged but doesn't fully understand. In the silence that follows, the queen picks up the final jar of balm and holds it to her face. She breathes in, closes her eyes, and then, with a single fingertip, she begins to apply it first to her temples, then her cheeks, her chin, the arch of her brow. No mirror needed. Her hands know the ritual. They have traced this path hundreds of times, and yet every movement feels sacred, as if the balm carries something new tonight. She glances once in your direction, not to meet your eyes, but to confirm you're watching. Not as a servant, as a witness. You're assigned a new duty, now fragrance blending. Tieni says it's because of your steady hands, but you suspect it's because you didn't flinch when Akhenaten touched the queen's face. The fragrance corner is cluttered with tiny flasks, each stoppered with linen and wax. The labels are smudged or missing, so you must go by scent. Some make your eyes water, sharp resins, uncut musk. Others nearly vanish when opened, as if the scent itself doesn't wish to be caught. Your task is to stir a new blend, one meant for the queen's neckline. It must rise gently, never overpower. Something that unfolds slowly, like a song with no chorus. You're given starting notes: sweet marjoram, powdered iris root, and a droplet of myrtle oil. You hesitate on the last myrtle, can smell bitter, almost medicinal. But Chani assures you the queen prefers its honesty. You start to mix, swirling the oils with a palm twig. The scent builds in layers, sweet first, then earthy, then something almost metallic. You catch a note of ambergris and glance at Chenny in surprise. She nods. Yes, it came from the coast last week. Ambergris, rare, precious, slightly indecent. A substance born of whale guts and sea rot transformed by salt and sunlight into something haunting and floral. Only the queen could wear such a contradiction. You test the fragrance on a scrap of linen and wave it gently in the air. It floats well. Not heavy, not sharp. You hand it over. Tieni sniffs, then tilts her head. It might work, she says, unless it does more than that. That's the test here. Not just whether the scent pleases, but whether it moves, whether it does something. Does it make courtiers weep? Priests hesitate. Generals faint. Someone brings in the empty bottle, an ornate vial with a falcon-headed stopper. It's not just a vessel. It's memory. The general's scent, the moon night blend the formula from the foreign trader. They all pass through it. You pour carefully. The fragrance catches in the glass like liquid smoke. Historians still argue whether fragrances in the royal court were purely cosmetic or used in psychological warfare tools of diplomacy, seduction, distraction. The fact that no two mixtures were ever the same suggests a strategy, not just indulgence. A memory stirs. One of the older attendants once told you the story of a nobleman who fell asleep mid-conversation with the queen. Not out of boredom, out of sheer olfactory overwhelm. He woke thinking he'd died and gone to paradise, she'd said, biting into a fig. You finish sealing the vial and wrap it in woven flax. The queen will decide tonight if it belongs on her skin. If not, it will be buried in the vault with the other failed dreams. You breathe deep before leaving the chamber. Your hands smell of marjoram and iris. Your sleeves are stained with oil. And yet you feel clean, lighter. The fragrance has changed you too. Your next task is oddly delicate and oddly important: cleaning the queen's makeup brushes. You'd never thought much about them before. Small tools tucked away in trays of painted cedar. But now they sit before you, resting like sacred relics on a woven reed mat. Each brush is different. One is fine and narrow, likely used to line her eyes with kohl. Another is wide and soft, tinted with faded blush. Then there's a peculiar one, its handle made from ivory, its bristles wiry and uneven. Cat hair, Chenny explains without looking up. Whiskers mostly. You blink. Whiskers, fallen ones, gathered during grooming, for precision. You glance back at the brush. That tracks. Nearby, another brush sits stiff and coarse ibex. Bristle, you're told. Used for the thicker pigments, the ones meant to define rather than soften. These brushes aren't mass-made or interchangeable. Each is assigned, each has memory. You're to clean them, but never wash them entirely. You wipe the story, Chenny says, but you don't erase it. You begin with the softest one, dipping it into a clay bowl filled with rose water and ground lime peel. The mixture bubbles faintly. You swirl the brush in slow circles, watching the pigments release like secrets too long held. Reds, browns, a hint of gold. Each rinse is followed by drying with linen, then reshaping. The cat hair brush is especially fussy. One wrong tug, and the whole thing will go lopsided forever. You coax it back into form, combing with the spine of a date leaf. A soft laugh breaks your concentration. Across the chamber, two attendants are arranging a row of powders. Do you remember the day someone dropped a brush into the frankincense dish, one says? The queen didn't blink, the other replies. She just said, perhaps it needed purifying. You smile. That sounds like her. Historians still argue whether the use of animal hair tools indicated early cosmetic specialization or symbolic significance. Some posit that the source of the bristle catgoat, or ibex, carried ritual meaning. Others argue it was simply what was available and suitably fine. You dry the last brush and place it beside the others. They lie there like sleeping birds, feathers tucked, still fragrant with cedar and fig milk. And then you notice a comb. Not just any comb, one with teeth of polished bone smoothed by years of use. It's faintly cracked, one tooth missing. You almost set it aside, assuming it's retired. Tijeni shakes her head. She still uses it every night. You raise an eyebrow. She says it feels like her mother's hand. That stops you. You reach for the comb and begin to wipe it gently. The teeth catch your cloth with little resistance. It hums slightly in your palm. Whether from memory or oil or reverence, you can't say. Nearby, the queen's pillow is being fluffed with lavender and mint. Her linen sheets are being turned. You realize with a kind of sleepy clarity that nothing here is simple. Not a jar, not a scent, not a comb. Each is a page in a story told nightly, without words but with intention. You gather the brushes into their pouch, tie it with a thread of dyed flax, and set it beside the balm. One more step in the queen's descent into stillness. And yours too. You're midway through folding linen when it happens a flicker of motion near the shadowed entrance to the queen's chamber. At first you think it's a breeze, or maybe one of the cats slipping through, but then you spot the silhouette. It's one of the lesser wives of Akhenaten, her figure lean and hesitant in the low light. She's not veiled, which means she's not here officially. That alone is strange. Stranger still is the direction she moves past the attendants, past the mirrors, straight toward the shelf of alabaster jars. You freeze. No one says anything. No one quite dares. This is forbidden territory, and yet the room remains silent, though observing a ritual rather than a transgression. She pauses before one jar small, almost unremarkable. A recent blend. Pale pink, rose, infused. She lifts the lid, inhales deeply. Her eyes close. You wonder, does she hope to steal the scent? The recipe? The glow? She dips a single finger into the cream and dabs it along her cheekbone. Just once. Then she slips away, silent as a shadow. You exhale. Around you the room shifts back to motion, as if nothing had happened. But everything has. The jar is carefully resealed by Chenny, who says nothing. Neither do you. Neither does anyone. That's how power works here. Quiet violations, quiet witnesses. Later over tea, someone says, she's tried before. With coal, with perfume. Nothing sticks. Another adds, you can't steal what's not made for you. You think of the queen's silence, her daily rituals, the meticulous testing. It isn't just the cream, it's the care, the intention, the whispered words mixed with galena, the prayers stirred into oils. Historians still argue whether such moments, these private acts of theft, reflected court rivalry or mere longing. Some say the lesser wives envied Nefertiti's status. Others say they envied her serenity. You return to folding linen, but your hands move slower now. There's something unsettling about watching someone reach into the sacred, not with reverence, but desperation. Later that night, the jar is removed from rotation. Not discarded, not destroyed, just absent. You ask Chenny about it gently. She touched it, she says. That changes it. And somehow you understand exactly what she means as the stars creep westward and the air cools just enough to raise goosebumps. A quiet visitor arrives at the palace's rear portico. He's wrapped in a saffron-dyed shawl, barefoot skin dusted with travel and turmeric. A Nubian herbalist, tall with eyes that seem to catalog everything without judgment. You're instructed to receive him, though not speak unless spoken to. He carries no satchel, no scrolls, just a bundle of dried roots tied in river grass. Chenny greets him with a nod that suggests history. You suspect they've met before. Maybe many times, always under cover of darkness. She unwraps the bundle, revealing a single, strange root, knotted red-veined, vaguely shaped like a human foot. Its scent is unfamiliar, earthy spicy, and just slightly sour. He says it blooms only once a year. Chenny whispers to you in soil, touched by crocodile tracks. You blink. You've never heard of such a plant. Historians still argue whether the ingredients passed through palatial doors like this were real or invented ritualistic placebo as ritual. This root is called mbiari, or so the herbalist said to restore elasticity to the skin, calm fevers of the mind, and dispel second shadows, a phrase no one explains. He grinds a small piece into powder using a black stone disc, stirring it into a shallow bowl of galena and almond oil. The resulting paste shimmers oddly in the lamplight silver with streaks of rust red. When dabbed onto skin, it vanishes instantly, leaving behind only a faint tingling sensation. Cheney tests it on her palm, waits, then nods slowly. You're asked to fetch the queen's tray. Tonight, a new blend will be added, experimental, fleeting, unnamed. There's a hush as you present the formula to the queen. She sniffs, it dabs her finger into it, and applies it to the hollow below her collarbone. She doesn't flinch, doesn't speak. Only later, after she's vanished behind her curtain, does she whisper a word that makes everyone pause brighter. Nothing more. Brighter. You remain kneeling for a while, unsure if you're being dismissed or blessed. The herbalist slips away with no fanfare. Cheney places the leftover powder into a tiny ceramic jar, etched with what appears to be a lightning bolt, one you've never seen among the palace symbols. She catches your glance. We won't use it again, she says. Not unless she asks. But it worked, you murmur. Chenny shrugs. That doesn't mean it's meant to. And just like that, the most effective balm you've seen becomes a footnote, a whisper, a maybe. In the silence that follows, the shadows seem deeper. The queen's glow seems softer. And somewhere beneath the palace, the crocodiles stir. The final preparations begin as the stars blink dimmer behind wisps of desert cloud. It's the hour when even cats grow still, their silhouettes tucked beneath braziers and window slits. In the queen's chamber, the air thickens, not from heat, but from the gravity of ritual. Tonight, Nefertiti's final rite unfolds. She emerges from behind a veil, face bare but luminous, her eyes unreadable. No paint, no color, only the balm. Her skin gleams with oils and intention, and every step she takes echoes faintly across the polished floor tiles as though even the stone listens. She sits on a low cushion embroidered with lotus petals and stretches out her hands. Chenny kneels and places the tray before her, just two items now, a final jar of cream and a strip of blue linen embroidered with white thread in the shape of a Tain's rays. You realize, with a strange certainty, this is the chant phase. You've only seen it once before. It's not for everyone. Most servants leave before this point. But tonight, you've been allowed to stay, perhaps because your hands prepared the blend, or perhaps because you've listened well. The queen uncaps the jar and scoops a bit of balm with two fingers. Slowly, she touches each temple, the middle of her brow, her chin, and the space just above her heart. The scent wafts outward honeyed galena dried marjoram, the faintest trace of that Nubian root. She closes her eyes and begins the chant. It's not informal Egyptian, nor in the sacred language of the priests. It's older, looser, more song than speech. You don't understand the words, but the cadence wraps around the room like silk slow and circling. It's neither loud nor faint. It simply is like the sky above or the earth below. Each phrase is punctuated by silence. Then she wraps the blue cloth around her wrists, tying each one as though binding herself into the ritual. This is the gesture that confounds scholars the most. Historians still argue whether it symbolized sleep-death divine union or simply habit. You feel the weight of it in your bones. One final movement, the queen lifts a small obsidian amulet shaped like an open eye and presses it gently to her forehead. She holds it there for 3 deep breaths, then places it under her pillow. Only then does she lie back, not with exhaustion, not with haste, but with the slowness of someone returning home. Attendants step forward silently, drawing gauzy linen over her body, not to hide but to soothe. The balm will now sink in. Her skin will absorb not just oils but memory. You are the last to leave, guided out by Chenny, who carries a single oil lamp, whose flame dances with the soft rhythm of your breath. Outside, the halls feel cooler, wider. You pass the painted walls that show her standing beneath Aten's rays. And for the first time, you think those rays might be her own reflection. Dawn creeps into the palace without ceremony. The horizon, once ink black, now simmers with the palest of golds, like the sheen left by balm on warm skin. Birds stir somewhere in the outer gardens. A donkey brays faintly from the distant kitchens. The world is waking, but inside the queen's chamber, stillness reigns. You return to perform one final act, sealing the jars. They sit exactly where they were left arrayed, like temple offerings, lids waiting beside them as if they too are catching their breath after the night's labor. You begin with the one that held the rose balm, now nearly empty. The edges are faintly smudged from the queen's fingers, but you do not clean them. That trace is sacred. You press a thin sheet of linen over the opening, then seal it with a ring of wax, softened by breath and fingertip. No stamp, no mark, just silence. Next, the Nubian blend. A single dab remains in the jar, barely enough to scent a scarf. Chenny watches you closely as you seal it. "We won't name it," she says. "We'll remember it by how it faded." There's something beautiful in that letting memory replace labels. The galena and marjoram paste is untouched, unused last night. You seal it with a pinch of lavender tucked beneath the lid. "For dreams not needed," someone whispers. Last is the turquoise balm, the queen's favorite for summer. You pour the last droplets into a narrow tube and cork it. It hums softly as it settles. Historians still argue whether these jars were treated as sacred because of their ingredients or because of their proximity to power. Some were buried, some were handed down. A few have been found in tombs, sealed so tightly their contents still shimmer when opened thousands of years later. You gather the sealed vessels into a carved wooden tray and follow Chenny into a narrow corridor. This part of the palace is unused by most. Dust gathers here and spider webs stretch like tiny veils across the upper walls. You descend a narrow staircase and enter a small alcove lined with stone shelves. This, you realize, is where they rest. Not the queen, the balms, the jars, the unsung residue of 1,000 nights of preparation. You place your tray beside others, some marked, some not, some still faintly fragrant. There's a silence here, unlike any other place in the palace. Not absence, but preservation. You linger for a moment, then return upstairs. The sun is now fully risen, casting gold against the columns. You hear voices again, water being drawn, bread being slapped flat, day returning. But in your bones, in your oil-softened hands, you still carry the night. And so does she. The palace sleeps again, even as the city stirs. Somewhere, the queen lies in linen shadows, her skin cooled by balm, her heartbeat slow, even assured. The jars are sealed. The whispers silence the rituals complete. You return to your chamber, your sandals dusty, your fingers fragrant. You lie down not on silk or embroidered cushions, but on a simple mat, still warm from the sun's memory. And as your eyes close, the images swirl gently. Alabaster jars, braided linen, the curve of a copper mirror, the sound of balm being stirred with purpose. The night was not loud. It held no great battle, no storm, no sudden drama. And yet something sacred moved through it. In cream, in chant, in fingers, learning the weight of sacred routine. You breathe in deeply, and for a fleeting moment, your skin tingles just there, along your temples, a trace of marjoram, or perhaps memory. It doesn't matter. You are not a scholar. You are not a historian. You are a witness. And now, with soft breath and heavy limbs, you let the story slip beneath your ribs, slow your heart, and wrap itself around your dreams. The jars will wait, the queen will glow, and you will rest.